Well, greetings, everyone, and welcome to a very special online event today. It's called Calling on the Beloved Dead When You Need a Miracle. Connect to saints, ancestors, and holy helpers to guide you from despair into sacred possibility. My name is Stephen Dine. I'm the founder and president of the Shift Network. And I love the title of today's program because it is so often why we reach out for help to the other side, that there's like a sense of despair, like, where can I get the guidance I need? And we are going to get to explore how to do so with beings from other dimensions with a really remarkable guide who's also a lot of fun to learn from. Her name is Perdita Finn. She's the author of Take Back the Magic and co-founder of The Way of the Rose. She's taught for Shift before, and I think really brings a very unique angle to the whole realm of communicating, working with ancestors, and really accessing helpers on the other side. So Perdita, thank you so much for joining us here again.
Oh, thank you, Stephen. Thank you for having me here. It feels like, in this moment, all around us in our personal lives and in the public realm, there are things that are hurting our hearts, right? And we need to assemble all of our resources, both practical and spiritual. And that's what I really want to help people do.
Yeah, the more we have our team on this side and the other side, get everything lined up and align with the higher plan for things,
Exactly.
really can make a big difference. I know that myself. So we're very excited to dive in with Perdita today. I also want to let everyone know right up front, we are going to have a brand new course with her called Making Miracles with the Beloved Dead, which we're very excited about, and we'll share more about towards the end of the hour. So, Perdita, I think it'd be great to start with a little bit of backstory of miracles that you've created, co-created with the beloved dead, as a way to sort of gain entry of like how this evolved as such a key part of your path.
Well, when you start talking about your origin story, you go back and then you go back again. And I could go back to the very beginning when I was born, and the astrologers will tell you that, all my signs are in the house of death. So I've been working with the dead for a long
Good.
time. But um, I began consciously working with the dead when I became a mother, and I felt overwhelmed, and I didn't feel like I had any resources. And I've written about that a lot in my book, and I've talked about that a lot online. But when that practice really began to blossom for me was about 15 years ago, Stephen. My daughter, who was 16 at the time, became very sick. And I'm a doctor's daughter. So I have a lot of faith in medicine, right? I thought you go to the best guy. Of course, it's a guy. You get the diagnosis, you get the pill, and she'll get better. No expense spared. We'll get you on the road, honey. And what happened was very different. What happened was we went to all the best doctors in New York and we paid out of pocket, and we, got a second mortgage on our house and maxed out our credit cards because we all know the American healthcare system. And we got behind on our taxes, and our daughter wasn't better. And all the doctors told us something is really the matter with this kid, and we don't know what it is. And at that point, we lost our jobs. And so it was one of the most terrifying moments as a parent and a person in this culture, where suddenly medicine didn't have the answers, could tell us something was the matter, but not what. And then we didn't have any financial resources,
Wow.
and there's always that feeling like if I can pay for it, we can solve it. And that's when I began to access help from the other side, because I felt desperate. I felt everything felt impossible. I had a kid who I didn't know, might be dying. I had, and I had bills piling up and the IRS calling on the phone. That was my first miracle, Stephen. So the IRS, it's no fun getting in trouble with the IRS, let me tell you. It's a very scary experience. And they want you to feel scared, and they want to feel, and we were really looking at losing our home. And I thought, who do I pray to? And for whatever reason, I wasn't raised Catholic, but I have called on the dead for a long time. And I thought, I need a saint. I need a big
Got
powerhouse.
to go to the big cheese.
I need somebody big. So I thought, oh, who's a patron saint of taxes? Well, it happens to be a tax problem. So I call on Saint Matthew, the patron saint of taxes. And I called on him and I said, look, you pull this off for me, and I'm telling a story about you forever. I'll get everybody praying to you. Here I am telling the story so you can imagine the outcome. So I get on the phone with the IRS. I'm shaking. I'm scared, right? And they're going to say terrifying things to me, right? And I get this woman on the phone, and she listens to my story about my daughter's illness, and she's compassionate. And she says, this is a terrible situation you're in. We have this little known status called uncollectible, and we'd like to offer it to you, which means that we will leave you alone until this problem is solved. Did you know such a thing existed?
No.
Because I'm going to tell you, my accountant didn't either. And
Wow.
I didn't believe it. And I was terrified, like, are we still going to lose our house? So we went to our accountant, and we've been going to this guy for 20 years, right? We could drive over to his house, next town over, and we go in and we say, is this for real? He says, I've never heard of it. He gets on the phone with the IRS. He says, it's for real. They can do this. They don't often do it, but sometimes they do. And you got it. And we came out stunned, wonderstruck, and noticed across the street from our accountant a building. Now, we've driven to this office so many times over the years. Never noticed the building. And there's a statue in front of the building of this man with this great big long beard, and he's holding a book. And I said to my husband, who's that? I don't know, some big old guy. Maybe he looks like Moses or something. Maybe it was a synagogue or something. I don't know. We walk inside back to the accountant. I say to the secretary, who's the guy, the statue across the street? She said, oh, that's an abandoned church. It used to be St. Matthew's, but they left the statue of St. Matthew. So I'm telling you, there's stories like this, Stephen, with the dead, with the saints. And so I got really interested in the saints. And I started to do a deep dive into all the wild and wonky folk traditions that exist, which is really our kind of European indigenous heritage that we have lost touch with. And I needed them. I really needed them. My daughter ended up being diagnosed, and she was diagnosed with an incurable genetic disorder. No fix, no pill, no cure, just a prognosis that was terrifying. And the first prognosis they gave us is they said, she has a connective tissue disorder. And they said there's a very likely possibility she has something called aortic instability, and she could experience an aortic rupture and death out of the blue. You need to get her to an ER as soon as possible and have her evaluated for this. Well, do you know what that's like as a parent to hear that?
Jeez.
Right. Okay. Extremity. And we get down, we drive down to the heart center. And she's frightened and I'm frightened. And I'm calling in my ancestors as I do, but I thought, I need someone special. Who else had this connective tissue disorder that I can call on? Well, this was fascinating. There was a great deal of thought that Elvis Presley had this condition, and that many of his ailments and physical pain was caused by this connective tissue disorder. And one of the reasons he could dance so beautifully was he had this very limber, ecstatic fluidity, which these people have. It's very common for people with connective tissue disorder to be dancers, or Houdini also had it. But it also killed him. And it created heart problems and digestive problems, and also allergy problems and all these problems. And I'm reading about this in the ER while they're waiting to take my daughter into the CAT scan to find out if this is a possibility and if she's going to need emergency surgery. And I said, Elvis, you get my daughter through this with no heart trouble. And I'm going to Graceland, sweetheart. I'm going to Graceland. I'm going to go say thank you, and I'm going to tell the story. Everyone goes to Graceland, and nobody knows why, and nobody knows how. We all know you're a saint, but we don't know what you're the saint of anymore. Well, they took my daughter out. They brought her back in. Her heart is great. Her heart is fine. Doesn't affect her heart. Thank you, Elvis. I now pray to Elvis every morning for her health and protection. And so does she, by the way. So does she. I wrote a little prayer to Elvis. It goes like this. My husband and I say it every morning because my son also has this genetic condition, it turns out. So I have two children with this condition. And so I pray for them both every morning. See, love me tender, love me sweet, help my kids get on their feet, for it's one for the body and two for the soul, three to get healthy. Go, cat, go. We're going to Graceland. And I can't tell you how many people with Ehlers-Danlos have told about this who've been grateful to have a patron saint of their disease, someone who had tremendous talent, right? Tremendous gifts and tremendous suffering and pain that went unacknowledged.
Hmm.
So he has become one of my saints, one of my helpers. Is it a miracle to avoid the worst diagnosis? You better believe it. It really, really is. And we sometimes think our miracles have to be technicolor. The sun has to spin in the sky and, flowers need to drop out of the clouds. But ordinary miracles are often the diagnosis isn't as bad as we thought. The IRS has a solution to our problems. We're able to get a human being on the phone when we call the doctor or the health insurance agency. Whenever I need to get someone on the phone, I invoke my father's secretary. Her name was Ruth Nelson. She was a fabulous secretary. And whenever I call on her, I get a human being on the phone. And so many of my friends now call on Ruth that I call her the patron saint of getting a human being on the phone when you call. So
Well,
all these different kinds of helpers from, St. Matthew to Elvis to a woman, Ruth Nelson, probably nobody, but her family seemed to remember. But now I have people all over the world calling on her and receiving her incredible, essential help. And it's a miracle to get a human being on the phone.
well, I love the playful way you share these stories, and there's definitely some the deeper principles here. One of them, which I just want to bring forward, it sounds like really honing in for the specialized help that you need, not just kind of generalizing out to like help me universe. You're really narrow casting to say, okay, this is who I want to connect in with, and that sounds like a key principle of what you're doing.
It really is. And if you think about, say, herbalism, right? We want the precise medicine, right? We need the right herb for the right ailment. It's not just, sometimes there are adaptogenic herbs that we take just to make us feel better. And there are guides on the other side that we just invoke for our daily blessings. We have, guardian angels and mothers of all kinds. We just call upon all the time for everything. But then there are times when we need a very precise help, right? You know, I don't call on the plumber when I need an electrician. I call on the electrician. By the way, there are patron saints of plumbers and electricians.
I had no idea there was this level of specialization on the other side.
Oh, well, here's the thing that's fascinating, Stephen. I started to do this deep dive, right? In the Middle Ages, before the Reformation, before the kind of attack on all of these old ways of relating to the other side, you had a team of helpers that you were born into. And you know that scene in Sleeping Beauty when all the fairies are assembled around the bassinet, to bring a special blessing or gift to the little baby. It was like that when everyone was born. So you would be given a name, and that name would connect you to an ancestral saint, Saint Stephen, or Saint Anne, or Saint James, or Saint Matthew, right? So you'd have a name saint, and you'd be born in a place. And that place would have some local saints, saints of the land, saints of the water, saints of the mountain, saints of the rock, saints of the spring. Sharon Blackie has done a lot of research on these old saints connected to the water places and the saints there. You would have a saint for your profession. If you were a plumber, it was Vinnie Ferrer. And believe me, I always call on St. Vinnie when I need plumbing help. And St. Vinnie Ferrer was the patron saint of your profession, your guild or your group. If you had a physical ailment, there were patron saints for every different body part. If you had a hurt knee, it was one saint. If you had a hurt hand, it was another. If you had cancer, it was still another. And the specialization is that, people over time develop areas of expertise at the saints. And it's interesting to call upon them. My father, he was a doctor, Stephen, and he always used to say to me, if you're going to go to get your gallbladder out, go to the guy who does nothing but take gallbladders out. You want to go to the person who knows how to do this. There's also patron saint of gallbladder disease. So just so you know, and so it's like that with the saints. We want to have a team, and we do have a team for every single aspect of our lives. We're not alone. We're not helpless. We don't have to do it alone.
Mm. Let's talk a little bit about the process of making connections so that you're not feeling like you're doing it alone. So there's the kind of petitionary prayers that you're offering, like, please, please help, and directing that to a specific being. How do you have you learned to just kind of deepen that connection so it becomes more of a two-way street of communication and a sense of...
Yeah. So let's start. I often say that if we want to cook up a miracle, it's a little bit like making bread. I don't know anyone here has made bread, or if have you ever made bread before? Got into
A little bit,
sourdough?
not so
Okay.
much.
Okay. I got into the whole sourdough thing during COVID. So, essentially, if you're making bread, all you need is flour and water, right? You combine these two ingredients. The yeast in the air and from your hands from kneading the bread will allow it to rise, and you'll be able to bake bread. That's it. It's that simple. And it's just that simple to make a miracle happen. Now, of course, we often want, experienced chefs and bakers to give us their advice so we can get better at it. Believe me, it was hard to get that first sourdough starter going. But eventually I learned how to do it. And so I want to talk about the flour and the water of a miracle. And there are two aspects to creating a miracle that we have to bring forth. And if it's all right, I'd like to do a little, a guided tour of that.
Let's do it.
Okay. So we often only pray when we reach the end of our rope. And when we no longer feel like we are in control. We don't have the money we need. We don't have the help we need, just like I was in, right? I think for our ancestors who lived in times before money, they prayed for everything. They prayed to find food each day. They prayed to find shelter each day. They prayed to get the fire going each night. They prayed to find love because there were 12 people in their group and they wanted to run into somebody else, right? You know what I mean? They didn't have any dating apps. So there were many things they prayed for. Often I say that we have to tap, and this can feel a little scary in the beginning, into our hopelessness. Where are the places we no longer feel in control? And so that's what I'm going to do a guided invitation to do. Nobody has to share this, but we all have these places within us. And what I've seen in my work, Stephen, is what feels impossible to us is not impossible to those on the other side. What feels incredibly heavy and overwhelming to us is light as a breeze to those on the other side. St. Matthew looked at my tax problems and said, uncollectible. No big deal. Call me when you got a real problem, baby. It wasn't like that was not a hard one. And the same was true of Elvis, right? Oh, we can work on that. Well, but we feel very burdened, and sometimes we even feel ashamed of our hopelessness. Like if I were really spiritual, I wouldn't feel despair over this. I wouldn't feel out of control about this, but that's not true. Our despair, our hopelessness, our sense of fed upness, that's exactly where those on the other side want to come and relieve us of our burdens. But we have to begin by being specific about what those are. So
it's almost like until you're really vulnerable with your own despair and emotions, you can't send out the strong enough signal, it sounds like.
Oh, and the great guard against it in our culture is money, right? So the prayer of a lot of, modern Americans is, let me win the lottery. right? If I had enough money, I wouldn't have to worry about anything, right? And the souls on the other side, the saints and the ancestors say, hey, you know what? We can do it without money. And I've seen this happen again and again. I've seen people pray for healing when healing didn't look possible and healing arrived. For love when they're 75 and it sure didn't look possible. This was one I didn't believe happened and it happened. Everything is possible. Anything is possible to those on the other side. And we build our faith in them by asking for their help. But let's begin by tapping into our hopelessness, okay? But don't be scared. We're going to put a team around that hopeless thing, and it's not going to be hopeless anymore. So, what I ask everybody is to take a moment. What have you given up on? Was there a dream you've given up on? Something you wanted that didn't happen, that a part of you still wants but no longer thinks is possible? Maybe it has to do with something you wanted to happen with love. Maybe it has to do with something you wanted to have happen in your work or your creativity. Maybe it has something to do with a relationship or your body. But it's something you feel like you've given up on, but it's still there. You remember that dream. Maybe it's a dream you haven't dared look at since you were 8 years old or 10 years old. Just note it, write it down. It takes courage. With courage, the root word of courage is heart. It takes a lot of courage to admit that, but you don't have to share it with anyone. You just have to acknowledge it. Is there something about your body that feels perplexing and insolvable, a health problem that you can't get behind, something you wish you could do and can't seem to do, that the doctors can't seem to fix, that you wish they could fix, that they tell you, no, not going to happen. You know, your knee's never going to get better. Nope, you'll never be able to do a back bend in yoga. Nope, not going to happen. Something you feel frustrated about in your body. Is there some knot in one of your relationships with a child or with a parent? An estrangement, perhaps. Something that feels insolvable. Maybe it's a problem with a spouse or a partner. Maybe it's a problem with a child or a sibling. Maybe it's a friendship that has frayed. And it aches us in our heart. It feels frightening to note these things, to note these disappointments, these failures. We feel ashamed, like I should have been able to fix that, but we haven't been able to fix it. And we don't know why. And then take a look at our world, your community, the development they're trying to set up in the beautiful field in your town, which is happening as I speak. The situation that you've been working on that's suddenly falling to pieces, the thing you're most worried about in the world. Maybe it's the bees for you. Maybe it's the insects for you. Maybe it's the trees. Maybe it's a river. Maybe it's the orca whales. Maybe there is some pain in the world that feels like you want to do something for it and you don't know what, and it hurts your heart. Make a note of that thing. Each of these things we've noted can be circled, become a project for those on the other side. And just hold them for a moment. My daughter has an incurable genetic condition, and it brings with it new challenges all the time for our family, not just for her body and her spirit, but also for our family. And yet, for each of these issues that has arisen, we have found new intimacies and relationships with the other side. And it's also taught me that when I look at climate change, which I've written about for a long time, and I think, I don't know what to do, I feel hopeless and despairing, that there are those on the other side who are not hopeless and know exactly what to do. And they're going to show me what I can do to feel better. So I don't know, Stephen, you may not want to share anything. You may want to share something. This is very intimate work. And so I don't know if you do. You don't have to. It's for everybody, right? But
Yeah, I think the thing I was focusing on, I'm not going to share, but I appreciate one of the things I just appreciate is just like how important that is, like open that portal and be really real with it. Just because it's like it's easy to kind of like cheerlead ourselves out of something that's like difficult or kind of focus on the positives or a lot of positive psychology sort of things. But I really appreciate that you're opening the portal to wherever the depths of you giving up is, you know?
sometimes we have to give up on hope, which hope can often be the last gasp of our personal will,
Hmm.
our personal control, and our personal vision, right? A friend of mine who's an environmentalist says the hope of every modern American is to keep on driving to Walmart to buy more stuff. You know what I mean? Like, that's a hope we may have to give up on. So sometimes, and what's the hope of the alcoholic is to be able to keep on drinking and not get into trouble, right? And so sometimes we have to acknowledge our despair, but we don't stop. If all we have is our despair, then we're what? We're like, French existentialists, and we're gonna have to start smoking cigarettes and feeling miserable all the time and not being of any use to anyone, right? So I don't want to stop there. All right. I know a woman, and she did this with me, and she hadn't talked to her daughter in 15 years. And after 15 years, she thought, that's it, right? I can't fix this. She had tried everything. Everything had failed. And then she admitted just the grief and the horror of this, right? This failed relationship. And we assembled a team for the dead, for her and the ancestors and the saints. And that night, and I'm not making this up, that night she got a phone call from a couple. Many years earlier, decades earlier, she had done a painting of her daughter, and she had included it in her first art show. And she had sold that painting. And it had ached. She thought, oh, I should never have sold that painting of my daughter. I should have kept it as a treasure. I didn't, it's a sign of like the mistakes I made in our relationship. And she got a call from this couple, and they said, we bought this painting of your daughter decades ago, and we've looked you up and found you through the gallery. We want to give it back to you. No joke.
Amazing.
Right? And they gave it back, the painting. And the day the painting arrived, and it had very bright, vibrant autumnal colors, there arrived at her doorstep a bouquet of flowers in the same autumnal colors from her daughter, saying, Mommy, I miss you. I love you. Can we talk?
Oh, that brings tears to my eyes. What a beautiful story.
Yeah, I mean, there are even more, there's even more magic to it if I had hours to tell you about it all. But there is nothing that's impossible to those on the other side.
Mhm.
Now, this woman had a team. So everyone needs a team. You can't do it alone. And I want to help you get a team. Okay. I'll tell you about how I put my team together for climate change. All right. Because when I feel panic stricken about climate change, I thought, oh gosh. So after I start doing with this stuff with my daughter and the taxes, I think, who do you con for climate change? You've got to go to the patron saint of the hopeless and the impossible. And that's a saint called Saint Jude. People have heard of St. Jude's, right? The
Yeah. Children's
hospital for
Hospital.
St. Jude. He's a fascinating saint, though, if you look into him. He wasn't popular until the 19th century. Before the 19th century, people had lots of saints they called on. And then they started to only call on the saints when things felt hopeless and impossible. The reason Jude started to be called on, and there's a lot of folklore, there's a lot of theory that Jude was the unacknowledged child of Mary Magdalene and Jesus. Okay, who knew, right? Who knew? And that he got kind of lost in the story. And his story is sort of hopeless and forgotten. He's always portrayed wearing only green. It's as if he is that child of sunlight and earth, water and earth, Lord and Lady. It's like he's the life force of the planet itself. And I realized that's what I was praying to. I was praying to the life of this planet, to protect the life of this planet. Started calling on St. Jude. There is a saint for your problem. I promise you, there is a saint for your problem.
It
And
kind
you,
of it leads to an interesting question. So when you're assembling this team, it sounds like you want to have a saint on board. That's
oh, you don't
so
have to,
maybe well, but it sounds like
but
it's good to
again,
have
it's
a
always
diverse team. It sounds like some different ancestors, other guides, beloved ones.
sure.
Yeah, share a little bit about.
My feeling is always let's bring on as many people as we can, right? Like, okay, so if I'm praying about someone's love life, right? And love life, look, everybody wants to pray about love, and love just feels impossible in this day and era with the dating apps, right? So if you're praying about love, you go, who's the patron saint of love? Her name is Saint Anne, and she is the fascinating saint. She's considered the mother of the Virgin Mary, but she's one of the oldest goddesses, Anu, the goddess of the ocean. And she becomes syncretized into Saint Anne. But there's this prayer that people have prayed for hundreds of years. It goes, Saint Anne, bring me my man. And in the Middle Ages, they would have the virgins would make these very phallic candles that they would anoint with oils to bring fertility to the community and good weddings for everybody. So Saint Anne's always a good person to have on your team if you're praying for love. But I mean, she's a great one. But you might also want somebody else on your team for love. So one of the first places I say is, this is what Google is for. This is the best part of Google, right? This is the best part is like, so who is the weird patron saint of my particular problem, right? Who is the patron saint of estranged children, of lost children? Who's the patron saint of cancer? Oh my goodness, I just got a cancer diagnosis. Who's the patron saint? Saint Peregrine, cured of cancer instantaneously. I prayed him every morning for my friends with cancer. Every morning, and extraordinary stories. And I now have a whole list of people in remission. Like I have to move people from we're praying from stage 4 cancer to praying for remission to praying to vanish cancer.
You got quite an operation in place there. The prayer assembly line there.
Oh, Stephen, I pray. It takes me. That's my morning. I always say my job is I worry and I pray. I worry and I pray. So that's the thing. When I talk about making bread, the water are our tears, our worries, our anguish, our upsetness. That's the water. And the flour, the stuff of it, is all of those souls on the other side who want to help. And so we mix the two together, and then we're going to make a miracle. So here's the advice I want to give you. The second thing. First off, do a little research. Find out, get yourself a big gun on the other side, right? Maybe you'll find a big gun, maybe you won't. You probably will. I mean, I could recommend there are old weird saints you didn't even know. There's a saint, there are these old Cornwall saints from Cornwall that are all about cursing your enemies. There are some weird saints out there. So I don't do any of that, but you can find somebody, and also they're Indian saints and they're syncretic saints and they're African saints. There are big beings from all over the world, and I could talk more about who these souls are, but you can find one. But then the second person I want you to call on is somebody who's not an official saint, somebody who, and everybody has this person, somebody who you know is a big time helper, who might probably is never going to be beatified by the Catholic Church. The Elvis, right? Elvis is I'll tell you, when I pray for eating disorders and healing for eating disorders, and I have a number of friends with children with eating disorders, I pray to Princess Diana
Hmm.
because she recovered from bulimia
Hmm.
and she got healthy and she came into her power, her physical power and her purpose. And it was such a beautiful story of this girl who was just suffering and in pain and bulimic, who claimed her healing and her power. And everyone knew she was a saint when she died, right? Like treated her like a saint. People feel like she's a saint, but people don't know what she's a saint of. For me, she's a patron saint of eating disorders.
So you're sort of looking for what did that soul overcome in their lifetime in a really beautiful way.
Well, there are two things to look for. Excellent way, Stephen. What have they overcome really, really powerfully? What were they really good at? And then the other thing is, so, if you're praying about justice in this country, I mean, who better than Ruth Bader Ginsburg, right? Like, we're all praying to Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Like, I'm putting on my lace collar every morning praying Ruth Bader Ginsburg, help us. There are saints we know and we can feel because they had such a force and healing power. But then there are people who failed, like Elvis. Elvis had a disease he died of that didn't get diagnosed, right? And, a lot of people know Marilyn Monroe as a saint. She never found love, right? All those husbands never found what she wanted, which was just love and family. And why not pray to her for that?
Hmm.
She wanted it so much. I have a lot of saints on the other side. I pray to I started, my son loves food. He feels the whole world doesn't understand food. He's a farmer. He grows food. He wants to be food independent within the next couple of years. He's a great cook. He's partnered to a great cook. And when he was in some trouble, I started praying to Anthony Bourdain because I didn't want Anthony Bourdain. He's another saint, and and he has been so helpful to my son. And my son showed up in Provincetown when I was there on vacation one year. And I told him I was praying to Anthony Bourdain. And he said, Mom, it's Anthony Bourdain's birthday. I said, You're kidding. And so now we both pray to him to help him find a way through the restaurant business, the farming business, without burnout and despair. Anthony Bourdain did experience burnout and despair. I want my son to not experience those things.
Hmm. So you can kind of build upon their life lessons. And so the sincerity of the prayer is really emotional sincerity is really key. Are there things that you found are really particularly helpful about the framing of a prayer that sort of creates this bond of connection with a specific soul or guide?
Oh, well, first of all, you can't do it wrong. You can't do love wrong. Okay. And let me tell you, you start calling to Anthony Bourdain and he's so happy you're calling, he can't believe it. And he shows up on his birthday. So you cannot do this wrong, but you can have fun with it. And the more fun you have with it, the more fun those on the other side have. And that's kind of like, yeah, we can mix flour and water together and make bread, but we can add a little sweetener and we can add some spices and some nuts and we can start making a birthday cake and some croissant and we can really go a little wild here and have some fun. So there's no limit to the fun you can have with the saints. Like my little prayer to Elvis that I love writing little prayers, but I'm a writer. I know people for whom the fun they have with those on the other side is art. They want to make paintings or they want to make music. So, do you have someone on the other side you would like to beatify today, Stephen?
Like to beatify. That's an
Yeah,
interesting
who would you
question.
beatify? Who is a personal secular saint for you today? Is on
Uh,
the
I don't know. Yeah, I've actually turned to like for some reason like Akhenaten has always popped in when I've wanted to get guidance around the shift network, and he was trying to like really create an innovative shift towards a unitive paradigm.
Wow.
And it sort of got squashed out by history in different ways, but I found that there's like a lot of resonance there, and I feel like so. How about him? Since he a little bit got scrubbed from the record books by a lot of the priests who didn't like what he was up to.
It is fascinating. Oh, Robert Wilson just died the other day, and he did that wonderful opera about Akhenaten I remember seeing. Um, yeah, he's a powerful old Egyptian pharaoh. I don't know for people in the audience who don't know that he was an Egyptian pharaoh who was one of the first to propose a unifying idea of the divine, right?
Yeah, they had all these disparate gods kind of competing, the different priesthoods, and so he focused on the Aten as the sort of sun as a symbol of the kind of unifying core of all spirituality and religious worldviews.
What a great unifying figure to bring back into the fore, and how much he must want that vision to still be shining through.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it was a really good vision, just a little ahead of its time.
Do you have a picture of him you keep?
I do. Well, I have a piece of artwork over my desk that has it's kind of it's more ayahuasca inspired, but it's like somebody who in an ayahuasca journey had a vision of Akhenaten, and then it's really quite a cool picture.
Oh, that's fantastic. These images of the saints, and this used to be a whole school, was that they become devotional, these images, right? We offer up our prayers to them, and they almost become portals of conversation. And it's very important to have images that we use. That got outlawed a lot in certain religious sects, but they've always been statues. You see behind me
Yeah,
so
you got your
many.
whole team back there. You're full up on statues and pictures.
This is just a little bit of what the room I'm in my bedroom, in my office. I was writing a book and I was filling it with more and more figures to guide me and inspire me. And and it's wonderful though to have these devotional images that we love and statues. We can make them. We can, find them from other people. But they become very powerful.
Hmm.
I have a psychic friend and she loves to go to old flea markets and she loves to touch objects, particularly spiritual objects, to feel the telemetry of them, the prayers they've held. And it's just like an old set of rosary beads or an old statue that was prayed to will hold those prayers. So you pass these figures down and they gather prayer as they get passed on. It's why a lot of times people want to go to the relics of the saints. They want to go see the tongue of Saint Anthony preserved, in Padua.
So
um,
we focused a little bit more on sort of the longing or the loss, the grief or the hopelessness. I wonder if you want to share a little bit about sort of like also the vision that we're holding for our highest contribution, or giving yourself permission and then calling in team in terms of the vision that we're holding too.
so you have an intractable perplexity and knot in your life, a problem, and you start calling in a saint and you call in some secular saints and you call in some intimate dead that you know on the other side, and you worry it like a knot. Fretting used to mean not just worrying, but making music, making cloth, making a thread. And you start to fret it and you worry, you bring the oldest spiritual tradition in the world is a practice called Hibbodedit. And we hear about it in the Bible as Abraham would go out and pour out his heart to God. Hibbodedit. It's one of the oldest Jewish practices. And you can pour out your troubles to Akhenaten or your saints and say, I'm fed up. I don't know what to do. What do I do? And then every morning I might start my morning with a cup of coffee and some fretting. I am worried about this. And then I call in my team. I call in this person and that person. And I feel them and I fret to them. And then I listen. Because they're going to show me today what I can do today to make a change happen. And sometimes that change will happen like that. Oh, you're uncollectible. Sometimes it will happen like, oh, here's your daughter back in your life. And sometimes we'll take a step to one doctor and then another doctor. And then in another direction was with my daughter's health. and slowly, slowly begin to untangle a knot. And even with the earth, even if we bring our deepest fears and worries about the earth right now, we can feel what the earth needs us to do today. What will happen, what begins to rise in us, that rising dough, is a miracle. And it's the miracle of faith. Faith not in our own power, in our own will, but faith in the other side. And when you have faith, the more faith you have rising in your body, and the only way you can get there is not me telling you to get there, but the only way you can get there is kneading that dough, kneading the tears and the flour together and letting it rise within you. The more that faith rises in you, there won't be room for any fear at all. And you become quite fearless. And that is the end result. That is the miracle, the biggest miracle that happens when we begin to assemble around us our helpers on the other side, is we're not alone. We're not afraid. We know that there is no situation in which we're stuck. There is no problem too big, too tight, or too hard for the other side. And if we really know that in the depths of our heart, we get a little wild and we can have a lot of fun. Really.
You have such a great spirit about you, and your laugh I just love as well. It's like there's a playfulness about connecting with spirit that is such good medicine, and really, yeah, opens up the space for the miraculous, but in a way that's also kind of joyful as well.
Well,
So
joy and pleasure are the great antidote to fear, aren't they? And faith is the antidote to fear, right? When we have it, we real faith and real joy. And what happens when that relationship you thought was impossible is healed? You pray for something that feels impossible and it becomes possible. And you know that a miracle is real, not in a way that you can like prove to a scientific community that miracles happen. You know, there's a quote, my father, who was an atheist, always used to quote Emile Zola, who said about Lourdes, he said, yeah, there are a lot of crutches at Lourdes, but there are no wooden legs. You know, like no amputee grew back a leg at Lourdes. It was like a dismissal, saying there are no real miracles. But in fact, that's a misunderstanding of what a miracle is. Because imagine that amputee who hobbles to Lourdes with his broken-hearted prayers. And suddenly when he comes home, he's no longer suicidal. Suddenly his spirit is renewed. That's a miracle. The phantom limb pain that he was suffering from is gone. And suddenly he feels at ease in his body. Those are the miracles. These are miracles you can't prove, but they transform a life, they transform a community, and they transform the world.
Beautiful. Well, Perdita, you're just a joy to be with. And I want to spend some time now talking about your upcoming course more directly that we've referenced, because it's an extraordinary opportunity to bring the magic and the miraculous back into our lives and build this bridge to a team on the other side in a way that is very real and very effective and very illuminating as well. So we're very excited that Perdita has come back to teach a new program for Shift. It's called Making Miracles with the Beloved Dead. Establish your personal holy helpers of saints, ancestors, and spirit allies. You can find it at the URL, yourholyhelpers.com, yourholyhelpers.com. This is a 7-week program. You don't need to have any specific background. It's just if you want to add this perspective to your life and add these relationships to your life. So Perdita, love for you to share in your own words what your intentions are for what people will come away with, and then we can go through the modules. I'll read them out, and you can give us a preview of what's coming.
Well, this is an opportunity for each and every person to experience their own miracle and to put everything in place that they need for that miracle to happen. And we all need that. We all have a place in us that we want to transform. And once we've experienced a miracle, a river of miracles start to flow to us that we can give to others and we can give to the world. And so this work feels very urgent to me and very important right now. I want to fill people with a faith to make good things happen in the world right now. I really do, Stephen.
Mm. Well, it starts with us and it ripples out to the collective. I love that you're focusing so much on climate change with this work as well. As it's really empowering to think of influencing these larger macro systemic problems too. So,
Well,
Margaret,
we often don't know what to do. It feels too big,
yeah.
right? To us, it's too big. But suddenly, I know a woman who started keeping bees, and suddenly her whole community is keeping bees with her. Suddenly, her whole community is banning pesticides, right? Wow, what happens when that happens person to person to person?
Mm. Great. Well, module one is called Call in Sacred Allies to Midwife Your Miracle.
We are going to look at some of the traditional rituals and folklore around those on the other side and how they can inform our own practices. And there's a lot of fun stuff that we'll look at and do together, from figuring out what saints have already called us and we haven't maybe been listening because they've already got us.
Module two, Enshrine an Ancestor to Awaken Their Miraculous Gifts.
We're going to do DIY beatification. Anybody
What a great
okay?
phrase.
Be Pope in this session. But I say that facetiously, but I mean it seriously, which is people used to know that when someone died, there was a little girl who died in Caen, France in, I think, 800 AD, right? A little girl, 10 years old. She was a prankster, a jokester, a bit of a mischief maker in the town. And people started noticing that she was still around after she died, but she was solving problems in the community in a mischievous way, in a playful, silly way that had her fingerprints. And her name was Saint Foy. And Saint Foy so helped this little town that they built a cathedral to her. Saint Foy so helped this little town through the centuries that during World War II, the whole community prayed to her during the occupation, and she delivered. 1,000 years after her death, people were still praying to this little girl. And there are children in your life who died seemingly too soon. There are people in your life who are saints if you know how to activate them.
Module three, Channel the Power of Secular Saints to Energize Your Spiritual Practice.
Elvis, Princess Diana, David Bowie, you can call on them. You just need to know how. This is going to be so much fun. We're going to learn how to write our own prayers to the saints and create our own icons and go wild with them. They're just waiting for it. We were practically doing it. We have to put it into practice.
Module four, Read the Natural World as an Oracle to Deepen Your Sense of Spiritual Belonging.
The saints are always connected to the flowers, the birds, the trees, and the earth. And we're going to explore the very deep significance of that and how those on the other side speak to us every day when we walk outside. Everyone is psychic, but we have forgotten how to awaken our intuitive perceptions of the natural world.
Module five, Reclaim Ancient Divine Feminine Lineages to Awaken Sacred Memory.
Yeah, we're going to look at some of the big mamas. And are all the mamas the same? Probably not. Our Lady of Einsiedel, you pray to her for different things. Then you pray Our Lady of Rocamadour. Then you pray to Our Lady of Le Puy. Then you pray to Our Lady of Guadalupe. We're going to look at all of these different, not just goddess figures, but mothers of the land, mothers of the earth. The earth is going to take us back to the saints in the dirt beneath our feet.
Module six, Move in Rhythm with the Sacred to Deepen Connection with the Unseen.
How long does it take to get your miracle? That's what everybody asks. And how do we begin to trust time and the rhythms of time? And what does it mean to be on the pilgrimage of the soul with our holy helpers? We will begin to walk that labyrinth together.
And Module seven, Connect with the Timeless Guides to Carry Your Soul's Prayer Across Lifetimes.
One of the questions I always ask people, and I just asked someone this last week who is no longer with us, what prayer do you want me to hold for you for your next life? What would you pray for today if you knew you had all the lifetimes in the world for that prayer to be answered? And who would you give that to hold on the other side?
Hmm. Beautiful. What an extraordinary program. And I just, you have such a beautiful way of bringing this information forward. You know, it touches, inspires, and also just makes it a lot of fun as well. So I think everyone who joins is going to be in for a treat and open to some very practical help from the other side. So it's again, it's the whole program is laid out in detail at yourholyhelpers.com, yourholyhelpers.com. Few other things about it. So not only will you get the 7 90-minute live sessions with Perdita that we just talked about, and which includes time to ask your questions. You'll get recordings of every session, both video and audio, as well as word-for-word transcripts. There's weekly practices for home. There's a community to support you and deepen your experience. And on the page, you'll also see a number of extra bonuses that Perdita has been generous in adding. There's a whole video conversation with Perdita and Greg Casale called Dancing with the Black Madonna, when the saints turn your life upside down in the best way. Want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, Greg Casale is a wonderful teacher and student of the Black Madonna. He's one of the few living experts on the dances to the Black Madonna, but he had an extraordinary experience the day after he pledged himself to her. And what does it mean, when those on the other side get us where we need to go in ways that are terrifying? He's written an extraordinary book about it that's coming out next year, and also leads pilgrimages to the Black Madonna sites in Europe.
Hmm. Definitely provides a different framing on the most challenging things in life when you can see these things as initiations and activations. So the next bonus is also really interesting. It's a sneak preview from Perdita's upcoming book, Mothers of Magic, Summoning the Wisdom of Our Ancestors. That's a PDF. You want to share more about that?
Yeah, my book comes out in May 5th, 2026, and this is a book that should be a lot of fun. It's very practical, but it's the only excerpt I'm offering from the book before it's published. So
Oh,
just for you guys, specially.
the only sneak preview. What a treat. And then there's one final extra bonus that you get if you sign up right away. This is our way to encourage you to go to the page at yourholyhelpers.com and read it, tune in, and if you get a sense to move forward, you're going to get a special bonus. This is a video with Perdita and Mary Carroll called Call on Your Team of Holy Helpers. Deepen your relationships with the saints who walk beside you. Anything you want to share about that dialogue with you and
Yeah,
Mary?
Mary Lee is a wonderful writer. She wrote a book called Everyday Saints because she realized that whenever she went on vacation, she wasn't going on vacation, she was going on pilgrimage. And
Hmm.
she was getting these saints were calling to her and summoning her to them. And she began showing up, and more start magic started to happen in her life. It's a wonderfully accessible book. I say, like, if Annie Lamott got called by the saints, that would be what her book is like. And she's a very down to earth, very funny, warm devotee of the saints and an
Nice.
expert too.
Well, that's a great extra reason to sign up right away to get the dialogue Call on Your Team of Holy Helpers with Perdita and Mary Carroll. Well, clearly this is going to be a blessing of a program and also a lot of fun as well. And it's just, we've kept the investment very accessible. It's just three payments of $128, so you can save 10% when you pay in full with one payment of $349. The course is going to be on Tuesdays at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. It's a good time also for folks in Europe. And even if you can't make the live times, you can still get the full value with the recordings, the transcripts, and the community as well. There's some beautiful testimonials from folks who took Perdita's previous programs at Shift, and you're just in really good hands, and you're going to have a beautiful, beautiful journey into a deeper relationship with the other side that can really have very practical benefits for you, as we've heard here today. So again, it's all at yourholyhelpers.com, and you get that special bonus with Perdita and Mary Carroll on Call on Your Team of Holy Helpers when you sign up by midnight tonight. So, Perdita, what a joy to be with you. I love your laugh. It's sort of so infectious. And I think it just speaks to this joyful undercurrent that even in times of challenge and hardship and real suffering, there's a lightness of being that shines through when you kind of can really build this sense of larger meaning and purpose and collaboration with the other side. So, thank you for your sharing today and your wisdom. Anything that's still on your heart that you want to share with folks who are considering doing the full course with you?
Well, I just hope people will come. And I just want to say that it's really, it is very practical. And it is the most practical work of all. This is what our spiritual ancestors used to do. That's what Mothers of Magic, my book, is about. And it's about recovering the practices of our ancestral grandmothers. And so it really makes a difference in our day to day lives. It transforms. It really, to not feel hopeless anymore, to not feel overwhelmed. We feel, we open our phones and suddenly we feel scared and frightened and overwhelmed. We don't have to.
Hmm.
We don't have to. We can be worried. We can fret, but we don't have to hold the burden. We can give it to someone else on the other side to hold. And together we can get through this, whatever it is.
I love that. I love that. That's a beautiful perspective that we can share it with those on the other side who have a lot more perspective and skills than we do here. So beautiful, Perdita. So thank you all so much for joining. Look forward to seeing many of you in this beautiful new program with Perdita. And again, you can find all the details at yourholyhelpers.com. And you'll get that special bonus with her and Mary Carol when you sign up by midnight tonight, which is Call on Your Team of Holy Helpers. So thank you so much, Perdita. Many blessings.
Thank you, Stephen. I'm not going to have to go get a picture of Eknaton and put it up there.
Is there any space left?
Stephen, there's always more space in my house. We're going to build a wing.
All right. Well, you're a joyful person to learn from. So thank you, Perdita, and many blessings.
Thanks.